Whereabouts are you location
Oh,
wise?
I'm in Georgia in
Okay.
the southeast, and so I'm in central Georgia. It's Milledgeville. It's probably about an hour southeast of Atlanta, I think.
Okay.
It's near, not too far from Athens, Georgia, where the University of Georgia is located. I don't know if you're familiar with Athens. REM. A lot of bands came out of there in the '80s.
When I think Athens, I think of Greece. That's
Oh yeah,
usually.
yeah. When we hear Athens, we think of Georgia, University of Georgia, Georgia, but we still think of Greece too.
Well, one of those things they can't avoid it
Yeah,
when things are named after other things.
I know. Like Paris, Texas.
Yes.
We have Rome, Georgia too.
I had the surreal experience of I went to Canada a couple of years ago, and a lot of the towns around Toronto are named after places where I live. And like
Oh
there's a
wow.
Boston in Ontario and different things. I was just like, I don't know where I am.
Yeah. Now, are you in London? Where are you?
So I'm in the northeast of England. So I'm in
Okay.
Lincolnshire is basically where
Oh,
I
okay.
am. But no one really knows where
Okay.
that is.
Oh, okay. I've been to London. I've been to Reading,
All right.
Oxford, Lewisham. I stayed in Lewisham for a summer course one time. Kingston. I made a
Yeah.
trip to Kingston.
Quite
Where
a few
else?
places then, really.
Yeah, so I got to see some. It's beautiful. I want to go back.
I recommend there's a lot to see in such a small
Yeah,
space, I
there
find.
is.
Yeah.
I only got to scratch the surface. I did get to go see Bernard Shaw's home one time when I was there. Well, when I was there with LSU Study Abroad, went out
Nice.
to at St. Lawrence and saw his little riding hut that he could turn to face the sun.
It's always nice to see where they lived and what they
It
did.
really is. I love that. Okay,
Well,
great.
welcome to the podcast.
Yeah.
Welcome. We're already recording. I'm terrible at introducing people, so I'm going to let you introduce yourself. Who are you and what do you do?
Okay, my name is Nevada McPherson. I'm a writer and I also teach. I'm a
Mhm.
professor of English at Georgia Military College. And in the past, I taught in New Orleans at a community college there, Nunez Community College. And I taught film and media studies as an adjunct at Tulane University for pretty about many years.
Mhm.
And then my husband retired. He was a speech professor for many years, and he retired. And we left New Orleans, and we came back to Georgia. I'm originally from Georgia in the
Right.
United States. So, um, yeah.
You're well traveled then.
Well, I try to be. I would love to travel more. I look forward to doing more traveling in the future. So
It's always worth doing a little bit of
it
traveling.
is. It
Yeah.
is. I think it. Well, it makes you appreciate home more, and I love to get out and see new things. It's always an adventure. Whenever I'm about to go on a big trip, I always get a little bit nervous, but then once I'm underway, I love
Yeah.
it.
You don't mind flying or anything like that?
No, I don't really
No.
mind flying. I team taught a screenwriting course at a film festival in Bali several years ago,
Oh
and that's
wow.
probably the longest flight I've been on. And yeah, but that was a big adventure as well. I was only there for about a week. I felt like I was just getting kind of used to things when I had to leave, but at least I got to see some fascinating things and I got to meet some interesting people and learn a lot. So that's one of the best things about travel is I learned so much and I meet so many interesting folks that I remember years later. So
Yeah, definitely. I'm curious then, because you just mentioned that you taught media studies and then obviously moved into writing. Which way around is it? Is your passion with writing and then you studied film, or vice versa?
wow, yeah, well, I wrote my first story when I was in the sixth grade. And so it started with that. And then I got more into film. I always liked movies growing up.
Hmm.
And I got more and more into film appreciation, I think. And one of the things, just I think it's great that people can stream and see movies in any format now. But one of the things that I think really helped my film education was watching movies on the big screen
Right.
and in their original intended format. And I'm really into classic film. And years ago, my husband taught a uh, a speech course. It was like a speech and debate course at a summer camp in Palo Alto, at Stanford, junior statesman. But there's a theater downtown, an old theater that shows classic movies. And we would go, we didn't have a TV. We were staying in the dorm during the summer, and we didn't have a TV in our room. And so we would go out to a lot of movies.
Mhm.
And I think it was watching, they would always show like a double feature, or and so I think it was going to movies just about every other night, going to see a lot of classic films on the big screen that really made me appreciate it much more. And even I love little small theaters, little indie theaters, the smaller theaters, but still they show a lot of independent, kind of character driven, really quirky films. And I love that as well. And my degree was in creative writing at LSU. And then I got my master's, my MFA in screenwriting. And so I didn't expect to like screenwriting as much as I ended up liking it.
No?
But I love to write fiction,
Mhm.
and that's why I feel like I finally, with my novel Poser that I finished, I guess a couple of years ago, it started out as a screenplay, but I think that I had to take a final course for my creative writing, and I had to take, the only one I hadn't taken was screenwriting.
Mhm.
And I thought, oh gosh, that's going to be difficult. It has that kind of weird format, and I don't know if I'm going to like that as much. But once I learned the format, I think that intimidates a lot of people about screenwriting, is it's kind of an unusual, it's an industry standard format. But once I learned that, once I kind of cracked the code for that, I really enjoyed, working in that form.
Mhm.
And so I wrote a lot of screenplays, and I think I had took me a really long time to find kind of a prose voice. And I feel like it's in the last couple of years, I've started to kind of find a prose voice that I feel like, works for me. And so as I started to, what I had started to do with Poser, that turned into my novel, I had started to adapt it, as I knew it was going to be longer than just one novel. It was running kind of long. And
Right.
so I decided to adapt it as a TV series, which I'm not as familiar with TV writing. I'm still trying to learn more about that. But it was through doing that then I decided, I'm still working on it as a series, but
Mhm.
I decided to adapt it as a novel. And the way I kind of do is I get into each character's head and voice as much as I can. And, tell their parts of the story through their point of view. And I feel like that worked for me. And that's what I feel most comfortable doing right now. Of course,
Yeah.
good to have a comfort zone, but then it's good to break out of that comfort zone too. So, but that's kind of how I got into writing more fiction.
Yeah, that's definitely that's interesting because I think, I mean, I went when I went to uni, I studied film and photography. So I
Oh,
met a lot
great.
of want to be, screenwriters and early people who wanted to be directors and all those kinds of things. And I find it interesting how many industries and professions they go into where I'm seeing ideas they first pitched as a screenplay, or they've like,
Right.
I've got an idea for a short film, and then years later they'll be writing a book about it or drawing something about it,
Yeah.
and I'm like, oh,
Yes.
you're just recycling everything.
It is. It is. And well, and it's trying it out in adapting it to different forms. And
Yeah.
it's interesting that you said that, because I had um, a short, I mostly wrote feature film scripts, but then,
Mhm.
spec scripts, but then I had one short film script that I directed as a short film years ago. And I acted in it and I directed it, which is, I wore a lot of hats, which is really hard. And people said, that's going to be really hard to do
Yeah.
that. And I said, I know. And I tried, and it was difficult. But after doing that, I decided I had storyboarded it. And
Right.
to try to get it where we could, get it done in a weekend, which we didn't, but anyway, but then we finally finished it. But anyway, I storyboarded it, and I really enjoyed that part of it. My characters, when I did the storyboard, were a little more than stick figures. Um, but it got me into that. And so then I started adapting. I adapted, let's see, so far three of my screenplays I adapted into graphic novels. And
Right.
so
Yeah.
when I was much younger, I used to enjoy drawing. And so I went back to trying to draw these things. And at first, my characters just, once again, were a little more than stick figures. But the more I practiced, it took years,
Yeah.
because it was hand drawn. It was like a kitchen sink. I took the long way to do it. But I think I found a little quirky style, that kind of fit with my characters and everything. And so that kind of got me into graphic novels. And then and now I'm getting more and more into prose and trying to, I feel like I found my voice for now with that. So.
Yeah. I find it quite a hard transition from kind of being taught to write screenplays and then trying to write any kind of short fiction, just because you have to include so much more.
Yes.
In the words. I'm so used to just like, they're standing in a room.
Yes.
And it away to somebody else and it's done.
Yes.
It's such a long process.
It is. And it's so different. It's almost like you just have to, I don't know if it's a change of mindset. You just have to be so visual with your screenwriting, and then you can just go into flashbacks. You can go into all kinds of moods with prose, and it's wonderful. But it's a getting used to between one and the other. And also, I was at a Austin Film Festival a few years ago, and I heard some people on a panel. They're starting to have more playwriting panels. I noticed it's a lot of the film festivals. And it was some people on a panel who were working in the industry and maybe had transitioned from playwriting into TV writing and things like that. And I went up and spoke with one of them afterwards, and they said, I told them I have the screenplay and I'm thinking about adapting it to a play. I don't know, but they said, oh, you should adapt it to a stage play. And so I thought, well, that's what I'll do. And so I started trying to do that, and it was so hard,
Yeah.
And because, with screenplays, you do a new slug line, a new interior room day, and then that's where you are, and you can jump around, you can move around so quickly. But then switching the mindset over to stage, it's like, well, now this needs to be a fully fledged, scene. If I jump around, I'm going to have to change, the setting, which if you're in a black box theater, you can do that more easily. And there's so much that stage directors can do. They can incorporate video and all these other mediums, now into stage plays. But still, I was like, whoa, this is way harder than I thought it would be. And it's like I was reading some stuff, trying to get some ideas. Well, what are some ways to do this, to make it happen? And it pretty much said what I found to be true. You really just have to start over, think of it as a whole new thing. I mean, you've got your characters, but you do have to think of it in a whole new way, as a whole different thing, because that's what it is.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's hard.
It is. It's hard. Yeah. I think it's one of those things that I always try to encourage people just to, if they have an idea and they get stuck with it, to refactor into something different. Like you say, doing some storyboards and thinking, okay, well, I can turn this into a short cartoon, and or I could turn it into, whatever I want it to be, because maybe it's better in the other one.
Exactly. Years ago, I don't know, the director Steven Soderbergh. Years ago he went to LSU. He had just left there, I think it was, and he had just had a lot of success with Sex, Lies, and Videotape when I first came to LSU years ago.
Yeah.
But I heard him when he had done his movie on Che Guevara. It was a 2-part movie. There were 2 separate feature films that he was doing a road show. He was going around to movie theaters showing these 2 films. And this was in New Orleans. It was a neighborhood theater, and it was this great older single screen theater. But he was talking about what it was like, bringing that story to the screen, and about how he went to the company. I forget what company did it, but he went to them, and pitched the idea. And then he started making it, and he realized this is going to need to be 2 films, and how hard that was to go back and get funding and do all the things that would need to be done for that. And he was saying, well, if I had it to do over, which they're both films are great. I mean, it's fascinating. But then again, he said, some things are better as TV series. You can, kind of go into more. You could tell more of the story, because he's like,
Yeah.
there was just more of the story that I wanted to tell. And it was harder to do that in feature film than it would have been as a TV series.
Yeah.
I'm a TV fan from way back too. So I'm enjoying kind of learning more about TV writing and the structure and things like that.
Yeah, I think I've read recently, is it Michael Mann who did Heat? He basically made Heat twice, like
Mhm.
because he'd made it for either film or TV and then
Mhm.
decided it wasn't what he wanted to be. So he just
Yes, yeah.
reused the entire story and threw it back in and was like, yep, we're just doing this again. Like,
Yeah, well, I can see how people, like whatever medium,
yeah,
where you think it works the best or best way to tell the story. And sometimes it's hard to, you're passionate, you want to tell this story, but maybe it doesn't just jump out at you what the best way will be until you really get into it, or until you've already done it and you see another way to do it. So
do you
I
ever
could understand that.
do you ever find yourself kind of holding on to ideas then? Like you maybe think of an idea and think, well, if I could write this, but if I held on to it a little bit, maybe something else, or
Yes,
right,
yes. I
yeah,
do. I've got some idea, and there's another one that I wrote as a screenplay that I'm trying to. It's a manuscript. I started out a few years ago adapting it as a novel, and I feel like I just hadn't found the right voice to tell it, and I think I want to go back and revise it. But it's about the life of Eric von Stroheim, who, if you know the movie Sunset Boulevard, he played the butler in Sunset Boulevard. But
okay,
before that, he directed. Well, he was an actor in silent films, and then when he came to America, and then he was an actor. Then he got into directing. Then he went back into acting, and
right,
it's a long story. It's fascinating. But I had written it as a screenplay, and then when I started trying to adapt, I thought I want this to be a novel. And then when I started trying to do that, it was really hard. And I'd done a lot of research on it, and it's like, it's hard when you're trying to incorporate, I guess, something that's like historical stuff, and that certain conversations took place. You don't know what was said and all that, but I feel like, maybe I've got a lot of exposition and stuff like that. And I was looking over the other day before I dive back into the next one in my series that I'm working on. I was just looking back at that manuscript and some of the earlier chapters. I was like, ooh, I need to go back and really do a lot of, this is going to take a lot of work and time. I need to go back and really revise some of this. But as it got closer to the end of the book, I felt like I started to kind of hit my stride. So I do want to go back and spend some time working on that some more.
Yeah, I think that ends up being a risk a lot of the time, especially when it's kind of like a long format project, something which is going to take you a year or two, and people worry about that so much. I'm going to spend so much time on it, and then I might get to the beginning and think I'm going to have to rewrite all this again.
Yes, that happened with my graphic novels. I don't know if you're getting the show The Simpsons.
Yeah.
The earlier Simpsons look different than the later Simpsons. And so by the time I had gotten about halfway through the first one, my first try at a graphic novel, it's called Uptowners.
Yeah.
And it was set in New Orleans because I was walking around these neighborhoods all the time. I thought, this is the stuff I see every day. I'm going to start with this. I'm going to learn with this. And, as I was getting more into the groove of drawing, I started to realize, well, it's starting to look better. But then I would look back at the earlier pages. I was like, they look so different. I've got to go back and redo all that stuff and, kind of make them fit for what they'll finally look like. And so it was a learning curve, and it took a really long time.
I think I almost like I get kind of disappointed when people go back and they redo their. I always think of kind of like George Lucas going back and editing his films and like CGIing stuff out. And I'm like, just own the mistakes, own what was possible at the time.
Well, I understand that too, and I think I write a little column sometimes for this thing called Writers Fun Zone. One of my columns, I think I talked about. I go back and I think there's a mistake or there's something that needs to, and then I thought, at a certain point, just leave it alone. That's part of the charm of it. That's part of what makes it what it is. It's kind of kind of roughly drawn, but that's just the style of it. And it's going to be hard to get rid of all that. Yeah. And why would you? Because that's what it is. And so I've learned that lesson kind of to just at some point, let it go.
Yeah. I think
it
it's
be what it is.
exactly. I think it always disappoints me now when you see kind of like Hollywood films and they are so clean and so well maintained, and there's no prop misdirection or anything because they can just fix it all in post. And I'm like, it removes like the human element from everything.
Yeah.
There's thousands of people in these productions, but it doesn't matter. I can just fix it in post.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think that's why I like some of the like indie low budget films.
Yeah.
There's just something that's just so wonderful about that you feel that human touch and the human connection and things that you think, well, you might notice a little mistake, but it doesn't come off really as that. It's just part of the putting together of it. And but it's got the human touch and everything. And you appreciate that about it, love that about it. And that's what makes it, makes you want to go back and see it again.
Watch it again and look out for all the little, mistakes and gaps.
That's what, because I don't know, that's what makes it real.
It is. I'm curious then, obviously, you mentioned quite a few films already. I'm curious if your writing is as heavily stylized as cinema is. If you are a person who kind of blends that into the way they write, or whether you come back more to reality and write more realistic things.
My stuff tends to be pretty realistic. My novel Poser is it's the transgressive fiction, right. Kind of dirty realism. And so it's got somebody I think described it in a review, it has it being kind of raw, but yet tender. But my stuff tends to be more like character driven. I guess what some people might call low concept, but I like to write about real people, real situations, relationships, all the messiness that goes into all that stuff. I love to explore that. Awkward. I dislike awkward moments in real life, but I love it in fiction. I love it in movies. I love it in TV shows. I don't know if you're familiar with the show Curb Your Enthusiasm, Larry David, that kind of awkward. Like I said, I don't enjoy that in real life, but I love to see it on a screen or read it in a book. And so there's a lot of that, I think, in my fiction and screenplays.
That's interesting, because that's the kind of stuff I struggle to watch. Like I love like gritty realism stuff and all that, but when it comes to kind of awkward cringe, I can't sit through it.
Really? I have relatives who dislike that kind of stuff too.
I find it strange.
It makes them uncomfortable.
Like, because I like abstract stuff like a lot, especially, like when you feel completely lost just watching something like, I don't really know what's going on. Everything's surreal and concept. I like that. But then as soon as it's like an awkward pause between two people, I don't know what to do in this situation.
Well, like for surreal, like, do you have any favorite directors who work in that style that you could?
So one of my favorite directors is David Fincher's.
Okay.
And kind of the stuff he does, and it's any film which has that edge of abstract to it, I really enjoy. Where they're leaving more unanswered than you're actually kind of seeing on screen.
Okay.
But at the same time, I love really dialogue heavy stuff.
Oh, I do too. That's one of the things that appealed to me about screenwriting was that I love to write dialogue, and I think that really appeals, since the description in screenplays has to be more minimal, and the dialogue, I love that. I love writing conversations.
Yeah. Do you find you're one of these people who can just naturally write two characters easily? Like, different conversations, or you're just hearing it in your head, or just like, I'm just recording this conversation as this.
Yeah. I tend to daydream a lot, and I tend to. Lately, I can tell I'm getting ready to start back into my novel series. I'll kind of zone out and start thinking about a conversation that two characters are having, and I'll kind of go over that over and over, and I'll add things, and I'll think about things that are happening before or after that might influence that conversation. So I love that. I love writing conversations. And I have some scenes in my novel that have like a kind of a lot going on. There's one scene in an art gallery where there are a lot of the different characters kind of converge, but it's the little conversations taking place between a couple of characters here and there. I thought, wow, that might be difficult to do, but it's it happens.
Yeah. I've always found it interesting, the dialogue, that some people just can naturally do it. They know how people speak, they can get cadence down real easy, and then other people sit there and they write it and it just sounds like someone wrote a sentence and spoke a sentence, and then like, I don't know.
It's tricks. It is tricky. I guess I can't remember who said, was it, well, I can't remember, I might be get the director on, but I think it was Alfred Hitchcock or somebody else that said movie dialogue and screenplays are like life with all the boring parts taken out. but like what's really going on. Sometimes people, the subtext thing with screenwriting, sometimes people aren't they'll talk about anything else except what's really going on. So that between the lines kind of thing, I think Hemingway was good at that. The what's really happening is between the lines of what they're actually saying, which I have to go back and revise that kind of thing, over and over and over. Sometimes I'm trying to put more between the lines, but it takes a lot of work to take stuff out and still have the meaning. Yeah. And some of it, like with the description, you can do with screenwriting, a look, a glance, because you can't tell what people are thinking. And so you have to do it with a look, a glance, a gesture, what stage business kind of stuff. So it's a fine line. It depends, I guess, what you're trying to achieve in a scene, and things like that. So
yeah, I mean, it's about. I think that's one thing with writing books, which I struggled with, is you got so used to I can just put this in frame and it says everything I need to about the whole thing, and then you sit down to write a book and you're like, oh, I've got to describe.
Yes, and it's hard. It is hard. Because then you're like, well, yeah, because I know when I was writing my prose, when I was working on my novel, I had a lot of stuff. Yeah. And then I went back and took a lot out. Then I thought there's something, there's a fine line between telling what really needs to be there. And I put, and even some dialogue, I put back. And so, the whole editing process took a really long time. But the way I think I just, for the first draft, I just kind of gave myself permission to just, whatever I thought needed to be there, whether it did or not, I went ahead and put it, and then I went back and tried to, figure that out and kind of, shape it up. But you can't shape something up into what you want it to be unless you have something to work with, that kind of sculpting thing. I read a quote one time that said, writing is more like painting. You're just trying to you got a blank canvas. You're just trying to put stuff on there to have something, but the editing was more like sculpting, taking away.
That's interesting.
So that a shape can emerge. And I thought, and I've never forgotten that. I thought that's really interesting.
Yeah, that's a real nice way to describe it.
I thought that makes sense. That way I can visualize it.
Interesting. Got a bit of an odd question for you now, in the sense of, so are you? I always find with writers that they're one of two kinds of people. Is there either a people person or they're a people watcher?
Okay.
Which are you?
I think I do. I interact with people a lot with my teaching and things like that, but I'm probably more of a people watcher. Yeah. I like to observe, and I'm content sometimes just to observe, and you can probably tell me I talk a lot and everything, but there are times when I do just love to be quiet and just kind of watch what's going on. And they talk about, like, to learn dialogue, go and sit at the coffee shop and just kind of overhear conversations. And sometimes that is fascinating. And, but I love to people watch. I love to go to different places and just kind of observe people. I
think it's hard to avoid when you're in like a writing mindset of just like, what's going on in this table, and what's this person discussing, and suddenly they become characters.
Yes, yes. And there have been quotes that I've heard people say, or that, maybe, you know, people that I've known, or so, they might have a favorite phrase. And I thought, well, I'm going to use that someday. And I have, so.
Yeah. No, I think, I always categorize people in those two ways, because I think you either have to be super into talking to people and super, animated, wanting to learn the world and all those kind of things, or you just have to have a good attention to detail of how people act and talk.
Yeah.
And
Which would you say you are? Are you more of a people watcher, people person?
I think I've been a people watcher, but that's because when I was much younger, I was very shy. So I did a lot of watching people to see what they would do. But I think over time, I've become more of a people person, like with doing the podcast and wanting to just get to know people.
Okay.
Discuss as we go along.
Okay. Yeah. I was really shy too. I mean, growing up. Yeah. So I still am sometimes, but, I don't know. Do what you gotta.
Definitely. So I was just looking at Poser, in your book, obviously.
Yeah.
How long's that been out then? Is that?
It came out Valentine's Day. It came out from Acast Press, February 14th. And it's the first of a series called the Eucalyptus Lane novels. And the next one we're expecting will be released in spring of 2023. And so I'm going to be working on the part 2 of it this summer. We know it's going to be 3 novels in the series, possibly more than that, but we know for sure 3. And I've got the first one is written. This is what it looks like. I don't know if you can see it.
It's very nice.
Cody Sexton designed the cover. So I've got part 2 mostly written. I'm gonna be doing some revisions and some things this summer, and then I've got part 3 planned. And I can feel myself leaning toward a part 4 as well, but that's not fully.
Just never say never. That's the way.
I'll never say never.
Yeah. Never say this is the last one, because it leaves you a nice open to be able to go do whatever you want. Yeah.
Yes.
Does the series then follow singular characters per book, or is this?
Yes. Well, it follows the main character is this young man named Ambrose, and he runs away from an abusive home in Texas, and he ends up in the San Francisco Bay Area. And he's dealing drugs, but he's not great at it. And he runs afoul of this guy who's like his boss, with the dealing. But he works part-time, like his day job is at a S&M dungeon. And once he runs afoul of his drug dealing connection, this friend of his, this young woman who he has a crush on, who works at the dungeon, she's a receptionist there. But she suggests that maybe he come stay with her sister, who lives in Palo Alto, and stay in her guest house. And the sister's married and has a child and everything. But he goes with her to Palo Alto to meet the sister. And it's not until they arrive at the sister's house that his friend says, "Oh, by the way, I told her you're a Stanford grad student, just so she'd be more comfortable with you staying here." And that, and he's like, "What?" And so he starts like right off having to pretend he's somebody he's not. Right. And all the difficulties that leads to, and he starts to fall for the sister too, and she's married, and that leads to more difficulties, and the difficulties just kind of keep compounding for him. And there's some other characters who become main characters in this one as well, who will also be in the next one, and through the series. And then I'll be adding some characters in the second one. We'll meet the parents of some of the main characters. Ambrose's brother is incarcerated in Texas, and we'll meet him. And so I'll be adding some new characters as we go along, but continuing with the same characters through the series.
It's very layered then. Like, you've got a lot of depth to every single character you're kind of throwing in.
Yes. Yeah. I feel like, yes. I feel like I know these characters, I guess, because I've been working on this so long. I wrote the screenplay a long time ago, and that I realized later. I would read the screenplay, and I liked it. I had entered it in some contests. It did okay, but I felt like when I read it, there's something missing, and I think that's when I decided let me explore this maybe as a TV series where I can explore more about the characters. I feel like there's more to the story.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I started on that, I was like, there's more to the story than I even imagined. And so that's what prompted me to, like, I'm just going to adapt it into a novel. And I thought it would be one novel. And it was running really long. And I already knew then, even then I thought, well, this is good. This is running really long. And I knew already there'd be another one. And so I thought, I'm just going to make it into a novel series.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the best, working best for it right now.
That's definitely, yeah. No, I like the layering. Like, it reminds me a lot of like old film noir stuff where everyone you're kind of meeting gets involved, and it's like, you know, I know Jimmy, and Jimmy has this backstory, and it's on top of that and that.
I love film noir. I can't believe you mentioned that. Well, that's why I think of it as a noir transgressive novel. And I love film noir. I love classic film noir, and you know, all that stuff. So I'm glad you mentioned that. That's another one of my passions.
How did you get into film noir then? Like, what inspired you with that?
I'm trying to think what was my start with that. I guess just like I said, I like watching classic films and old black and white movies.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, there's just something I really love about just hard-boiled dialogue. And, you know, I mean, there's crime, and there's all these maybe some bad things going on, but then in a lot of some of the classic film noir, there's also some kind of touch of humor and, you know, stuff like that. You know, I like some of the old detective shows of the 70s and stuff that incorporate that. But I just like that about it. But yeah, even going like Maltese Falcon and things, you know, Double Indemnity, all those kind of movies. Postman Always Rings Twice, you know, those kind of things that were adapted from novels that made such, you know, great films.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm learning more about neo-noir as I go along, but that's why I think of mine. And I described even my first graphic novel, Uptowners, to somebody one time. I just kind of described the plot to them. They said, that sounds like those old movies, like those. I was like, thank you. That's great. That, you know, that's what I want it to be. And I like even like noir TV, you know, and stuff like that. Shows from the 50s and 60s. You know, I'm a big fan of the Perry Mason from the 50s and 60s, and Peter Gunn and shows like that. So yeah, so there's actually in my in the novel, there's several film references, and a couple of the characters are big, like classic film fans, and there are a lot of film references in the novel. You know, things that they're thinking about that go back to classic films, from Citizen Kane, Detour, Maltese Falcon, stuff like that. So I incorporated that.
I mean, that's why I asked earlier about kind of like whether you write in kind of a stylized format, because like, to me, when I think noir, I always think stylized. Like, that's
okay.
You know, the basis of it. That would be, you know, to me, obviously you automatically start picturing black and white, and you know, blinds with strong lights in detective offices. And
yes, I think when I first wrote this, I wasn't even thinking along those lines, and I think it's just because I guess it would be like a neo-noir in a way, with references to the classic film noir, but yeah, it just kind of took on that character, I guess. And some people, a couple of people have mentioned it reminds them of some of the pop boiler soap operas, you know, that used to come on at night, which is great. You know, I think of that too. You know, it's kind of like a soap opera in a way. Certain things about it, and you know, keep people kind of working with, you know, dealing with their problems, working through issues in relationships, the awkward moments, you know, misunderstandings, you know, changes of plan, bad decisions, all that kind of stuff. You know, they're kind of working through and dealing with.
Yeah.
So
I like. What I always liked about noir was just that everyone's slightly broken as a human.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I would say that's very true with the characters in my novel.
That's the best.
Very true.
I feel like that's more comforting than when you watch, you know, like a romance or something, and everyone's kind of just perfect. And you're like, oh.
Yes, that's
not the world we live in.
Not by a long shot in this story.
I mean, so in terms of kind of like noir and film, and what are your top five if you had a top five?
Ooh, wow.
I mean, I know it's a big question as someone who is into film. Like,
oh gosh. Well, if I mention 5, there will probably be 5 more.
okay.
When we finish our conversation, I'll be like, oh, I should have mentioned that one. So I'll say that right off the bat. But like I said, I mean, I do like things like Maltese Falcon. I mentioned some of them, Double Indemnity. I think Murder My Sweet. Some of them have titles that have murder and Murder My Sweet, I believe. Some of the ones where, let's see, The Big Sleep. Oh gosh, how many is that?
That's 3.
That's 3.
Yeah.
I
mean, I've asked you to do this, and I couldn't name my top 5.
I know, and I there's so many I love. There's one, I guess, I don't know if this is cheating because Eddie Muller, I don't know if you know who Eddie Muller is.
No.
He's on Turner Classic. There's a network here. I guess you may get it in England, but it's called Turner Classic Movies, and they show classic films.
Yep.
And this man Eddie Muller is kind of a film noir expert. I believe he's in charge of the Film Noir Foundation or has a lot to do with that. And he hosts this show every Saturday night around midnight, and then they re-show the movies on Sunday morning, but where he'll introduce noir films, and he'll talk about kind of the making of them and the drama behind the making of the movie and the stars, and he'll show the movie. And there's one that I wasn't very familiar with, but now that I've seen it, I watched it a few times and I fell in love with it, called Bob Le Flambour. It's a French film. Okay. And it's considered to be, some critics consider it to be one of the father of film noir in some ways. But it comes from, like, it influenced some of the new wave, the French new wave filmmakers. Right. I want to say it's Jacques Demet. I know Melville was the last name of the director. Right. But that's a fascinating film, and I don't know if it classifies as exactly. I think it kind of fits into the noir category, but but that's one that I really like. I'm sorry, I have a little dog barking. Can I just let her in real quick and then she'll be quiet? Okay.
That's right.
This is me, my Chihuahua, so she'll probably be quiet if I just let her sit in my lap.
She's adorable.
Oh, thank you. He's my muse.
Oh, the one committing all the crimes. And
Say hi.
We've had a few dogs on the podcast before. So
oh, good.
I always enjoy seeing a dog on a podcast.
Good. Okay. She hangs out with me when I'm writing. She generally sits in my lap, or she's got a pillow over here that she likes to sit on while I come in my room and do some work and stuff like that. So she's usually somewhere in the vicinity when I'm writing or thinking, drawing, stuff like that, painting.
Oh, you paint as well?
Yes, I love to paint. I've just started doing some pictures, like some silhouette paintings featuring Mitzi. I'll just show you one real fast. Okay. Here's one. I don't know if you this is kind of unfinished, but like I have some photographs where I'm doing silhouettes and kind of a life force with colors radiating out. So, and I do that. I like to do animal paintings with that, and then I do decoupage and stuff like that. I don't know if you're familiar with Flannery O'Connor, the writer Flannery O'Connor. No. She wrote one of her most famous short stories was, and then I'll come back to, I'll be thinking of my next two. Yeah. She wrote a famous short story called A Good Man is Hard to Find. And there was a collection of her short stories under that title. But she's really famous here in Milledgeville, where I'm located. She's originally from Savannah, Georgia, but she moved to Milledgeville later. And what was I talking about? Oh, but she started out as a cartoonist, and then she went to University of Iowa. She didn't know I think to do cartooning, she had to be in the journalism school, and she wanted to switch to fiction. She decided, I'm not really a journalist. I don't know if, I think I'm going to switch to writing, and she did. And the rest is history, because she really got to be really well known and won a lot of fiction prizes and things like that. And she kind of writes in the Southern Gothic style of writing, but it's beyond that too. But anyway, she painted a lot, and there's a quote I think that she has where she said that a lot of writers that she knows or knew like to paint, and she said it's not because they really are any good at it, but because it makes them look at things closer. And I always thought that was interesting, and I could tell. Like even with my drawing, with my graphic novels, it makes you look at things closer, and it kind of gives you little details and little quirks that kind of can go back and forth, like from your art writing kind of thing. And one of my favorite authors is Henry Miller. And towards as he got older, he got much more into painting, and he had a quote. I think there's a book. I used to have a book of his paintings, and the title of it was "Paint as You Like and Die Happy." So I do. I think also when I'm painting, sometimes I think about writing, and it's a good time to kind of quiet my mind and kind of get into it. So I don't know, like with your photography, did you find that you like that makes you focus on certain things, maybe
Yeah, I think
direct your
with my
attention to something?
photography, I use it. So I use my photography as a kind of like a memory tool because my
Oh,
short-term
great.
memory is terrible.
Mhm.
Like I could have dinner and forget what I had for dinner, like 20 minutes
Okay.
later. So I use it a lot for kind of taking like photographs of just spaces and
Mhm.
things to trigger memories and like, oh, this is how I felt at the time,
Yeah,
and
that's
guides me
great.
through that. Which yeah, when I'm writing, like I said earlier, I tend to just act scenes in my head, and that's how I easily find it to get dialogue and to easily just dive into conversations. And then, but the space itself, I have to flesh out a bit with,
Okay,
taking photographs and whatnot.
great, great. Because I love to take pictures. I think that's just I think that is a great thing to record.
Mm,
Memories and spaces and things. Because sometimes things disappear.
mm.
Places that you loved or that you remember. You may go back and it's not the same or it's not there anymore, and you have that. That's your painting in light. Your photograph of it. So.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
you were mentioning cinemas with kind of double features and films like that. One of my hometown theaters was torn down when we were kids, and
oh
I have all the memories of it, but I don't have a photo of it, and it annoys me
yeah.
all the time.
Oh yeah. I understand that.
Yeah.
Because I'm a big fan of like old movie theaters, and I know
Mm.
they're making a lot of new theaters, where they serve dinner and
Yeah.
wine, and but it's just there's something about just the movie theater to go get popcorn, and stuff like that. One of my favorite independent movie theaters in New Orleans. It was in a mall, but still, kind of an unusual mall with an eclectic, grouping of stores. But it was a quirky little theater. It was a Landmark theater, which Landmark over here shows a lot of independent films, and the one I used to go to in Palo Alto, the small one that showed newer films, was called, well, I think it's still there, the Aquarius, but it's kind of quirky, eclectic kind of little theater, and we had one of those in New Orleans. And it it's changed, and I don't even think I've been to it. It had changed right before I moved from New Orleans into more of a, I don't know, just one of those where it's really kind of more I don't know. It's just not the same as the movie
No.
theater. Kind of, I think, on more corporate kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Bit
And a lot of
homogenized.
the quirkiness, yeah, a lot of the quirky
Yeah.
personality, and there were some interesting people that worked there, and and the stuff they'd wear, and it was just a lot of fun. Kind of homemade little signs, around, and it's just all that's just not, yeah, it's gone.
Yeah. Yeah. They removed the human element from it. They're doing what they did to the
Yes, that's
films.
what they did. Exactly. So, um, let me see. There was something let's see. I think I had gotten my next two more noirs to
Okay.
finish my list. Gun Crazy. I'm a
Right.
fan of the movie Gun Crazy. And then there was one more. I don't know if I've included Detour yet on my list. But in case I did, um, a neo noir that I like a lot is let's see. It's where oh let's see. Philip Marlowe, I'm trying to think of the actor's name from
Mm.
the 70s, but it's a neo noir featuring Philip Marlowe. It's in color. Um, and
Something like Private Eye or like,
yes, I'll think of it. But while we're talking, I'll probably think. Anyway, um,
hmm.
gosh, no, I can't think.
It's gonna be
I
one of
might
those
have
ones
had
which
one
you
more
think of
black and
after.
white. Huh?
It'll be one of those things an
They
hour later
will.
you'll be
This
doing
happens
something,
to
you'll be
me.
like,
This happens to me. And sometimes when I'm in class, I'll start to say, so then I'll think, or I'll be talking about something. And then when I've dismissed class, everybody leaves, I think, oh, there was one more thing I missed. But yeah.
I'm curious then with your kind of class and obviously you must meet a lot of people who
I
are
do.
into fiction, and I'm curious if they all tend to lean towards doing kind of darker subjects, or whether you encounter people who are actually like, no, I want to tell the happiest stories of life or anything like that.
It's kind of a mix. I think
Right.
a lot of the people in the writing community that I'm in, like that I'm kind of working with, I was transgressive fiction and
Mm-hmm.
that genre, and the kind of the neo noir genre that I'm meeting a lot of people with right now do tend toward the darker.
Mm.
And in my classes, with my creative writing classes, I think a lot of people are just kind of, they're just, some of them are just taking the class just because they need a class in that.
Yeah.
Some of them are more into, or maybe they're already writing, or they write poetry or something like that. But they tend toward, I think, some of them have gone a little more to the darker, but more of them are just kind of just telling a story, or maybe something bad that turned good, or it's kind of
Mm.
taking a more positive thing. So it's kind of a blend. I think, I don't know. I mean, mine has definitely has the noir, the dark elements to it, or people maybe coming from a dark place, but looking for more, looking for something better, sometimes finding it, sometimes thinking they found it, and it slips away and there's disappointment. So I'm kind of dealing with some of that with some of my characters too, or maybe um, just trying to, I don't know, trying to come together and get to know each other, and maybe almost being afraid to reveal too much of themselves or what might happen,
Mm.
or maybe they're not ready for something to be revealed, and something gets out and they're having to deal with fallout from that. So I don't know, I think that mine is noir, but it has some of those stylized elements like you were talking about. um, and I think as I get on in the series, I think there'll be more violence and there'll be more of that to deal with.
Yeah.
But as of right now, it's more just, I don't know, just the relationships kind of shifting around.
Yeah.
And then we'll get into some more kind of revenge stuff and things like that, some in the story. So
I
as it
always
shapes.
I always find it interesting with especially with kind of revenge stuff of
Mm-hmm.
why we as societies like watching revenge things, because I remember studying kind of censorship back in like the early 50s and 40s of how you weren't allowed to make revenge films for a while. I think that
Mm-hmm.
was one of like the board of whatever films rules was no one was allowed to seek revenge, and then when they got rid of that, suddenly noir came.
Yeah.
Everything was revenge, and I think
Mm-hmm.
it's one of those parts of society where I'm like, it always fascinates me the people who naturally write this stuff but are also engaged by it,
Mm-hmm.
and compared to other parts of society who really avoid it and try
Yeah.
and get away from it. And I wonder why we do that. But,
Yeah. So, but I don't know. I didn't, like I said, that some of this was in the original story,
hmm.
and some of it is new, and I'm still kind of uncovering some things that'll be in part 2 and part 3 about the revenge stuff. So, and some of it maybe they'll take revenge, and then things will shift, and they'll realize things that they didn't know maybe when they took a certain action might be
Hmm.
revealed, and they'll be already be pretty deep, knee deep into some stuff with some bad people or something like that, and so it's they have to deal with that.
Yeah, I mean, you don't strike me as a vengeful person. Like,
I don't feel that I'm a vengeful person. Thank you.
there's always that mix of what they say. It's like, well, when people write or they create, they're just writing and creating what they actually want to do. Like, no, this is just
No, yeah,
it's
I mean it's the
interesting.
character. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, and sometimes I mean I try to leave room. Like I work from an outline a lot with
Mm-hmm.
yeah, with my novel and with screenplays. I sometimes I make a list of things that I want to happen, and I try to the screenplay, there's a pretty prescribed story structure.
Mhm.
Well, there are variations, but still there's certain points that you have to hit. And so I'm working, with an outline with my novels too. It helps me stay on track to some
Mhm.
extent. And but I leave room to discover things about the characters, because the characters do surprise me sometimes. I'll start down one road and maybe
Okay.
something will come up that I hadn't realized. And it's just, I feel like that's the character, just revealing things to me. So I try to leave room. I work from a loose outline, I guess you could say, but I'm not averse to taking a detour
Yeah.
from time to time, and depending on what is the most real and the most true to the character. Because sometimes when I've lost sync with certain shows or stories, I find that it's because it's something, the character, it's like, where did that come from? That doesn't seem, which I know characters, do surprising things, but it's like that seems out of character, like not in a good way kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I don't want that to happen. Sometimes I feel like, what did somebody else take over and change the character or something like that? If they change, I want there to be a reason for that. And that's okay. That's why they're doing what they're doing, kind of thing. So
that's interesting. Yeah, you allow that organic process. Because,
yes.
like you say, like some people do really dive in and structure of this is what they're going to do, and then ignoring the fact that the character would never do that, how they've written it towards the end of the the film or the book or whatever they're doing. So no, that's nice. I like that.
And I think readers and audiences feel that, like, wait, what? Kind of thing. So yeah, I want it to be true, as true as I can manage.
I think that's probably the best advice for people as well when trying to get into writing of anything, is just, if you focus on the characters, it doesn't really end up mattering what the story is about, because you're just being engaged with who you're watching and what they're saying, essentially. And there was a film I watched recently. Is it Burn After Reading?
I've heard of that. I think so. I think that's it.
Yeah. The plot to Burn After Reading is very thin. There's not much actually happens throughout the entire film, but every character you meet is engaging. So it doesn't matter. And they even point out at the end of the film, they're like, nothing really happened here. And we're like, nope. No, that's brilliant. That's what I like about it.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, to me, it's not, because people, it seems like I have this debate about whether characters should be likable. To me, that doesn't matter as long as they're interesting. That's the thing. I know there was a movie years ago, I think it was called Young Adult. I think Charlize Theron might have been in it. I think Diablo Cody was the screenwriter, and I remember her reading an interview with her about it. It was about this young woman. She writes young adult novels, and she goes back to her hometown, and there's a lot of drama. And but I remember the screenwriter the writer talking about how people complained about how, well, this character is just not likable enough. I mean, and she wasn't a particularly likable person, but she was really interesting. And I was fascinated to see what she would do next. And I think that's, I remember Diablo Cody was like, what's that? So, but I think it's just the main thing is that they be interesting, and that, the things they're doing ring true. And this thing about likability, I mean, some characters aren't, but it's like that thing too, I guess, like your hero shouldn't be too good and your villain shouldn't be too bad. So, I mean, yeah, I definitely I get that. But this thing about, likability rating kind of stuff, I don't.
Yeah.
People are just despicable, but they're fascinating characters. They might be a terrible villain, but they're funny in a weird way. Yes. So, I mean, I think that's what it's all about.
Of course, that can backfire as well. Because you can write someone who's absolutely awful, and then people love them, and you're like, you shouldn't like this person. They're a terrible person.
I wonder, like, one of my favorite TV shows is Breaking Bad. If you're familiar with Breaking Bad, like Walter White. I mean, you feel kind of, okay, well, I can see what he's doing, terrible things, but I can understand why. And I know there was that arc, which I'd still have to go back and think on, but like, you start to think, well, he's doing he's doing terrible things for
Mm-hmm.
terrible reasons now. And so people's sympathies kind of shifted,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So I think that's just, I don't know, it's just a trajectory. I guess it's just, I don't know, it's difficult to navigate.
Yeah, I think especially if you become invested in a character early on and then they
Hmm.
change, you kind of want there to be a reason why they're being bad. It's like they've had a reason
Yeah.
so far along, and it's like
Yeah.
surely they can't be that bad. And then
Yes.
like
Yes.
with Walter White, who then like tries to kill a child, and you're like,
Yes. And
uh,
you're like, no, what was that about? I mean, how is he changing? Yeah. And part of the thing too, I'm dealing with some of my characters, like in some of the future, the next novel and the next, it's like, well, one character wonders, will his brother's been like, will this have hardened him or not?
mhm,
What effect will that have on him? And then he's going back like in like relationship with his parents and stuff, and he's just, things that he's thinking about, well, what's happened to them in the ensuing years, and maybe they've changed, maybe they haven't at all. And
mhm.
he's shocked, by how much. So it's just, I don't know. It's wild how things shape up. And it's, I don't know, maybe it's, they somehow, I don't know, like there's method acting, things in people's own writers' own experience or things that have happened to them, influence them in some way. um, there's like someone blocked me on social media one time, and I hadn't had an argument or anything with
Right.
this person a long time ago. But I thought, well, that's weird. And then I read somewhere where that's like the ultimate passive aggressive thing is to block, because that not only means that they don't want to see your stuff, but they
Mhm.
don't want you to see that. And so I thought, that's weird. And at first I thought, well, and then I thought, well, just forget about it. Don't worry.
Yeah.
But just thinking about that led me to a whole new storyline,
Right.
that'll take place. It'll mainly be in the third novel, and what the story that came from that. It's not about that, but it's based on some stuff from that. And I
Mhm.
thought, well, it's good that happened, because I got, it gave me ideas for a whole new thing. So, it's just things that happen influence maybe over time. If you're writing kind of a long form thing, your own life experience starts to come in on different things. I don't know if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
You can never. Oh, yeah. I mean, no, that makes
You never
perfect
know. You
sense.
might take
Yeah.
a swerve somewhere that you didn't expect to, or something, or a character might take a swerve. But like you said, if you already feel invested in that character and sympathetic toward them,
Mhm.
you're dismayed to see them do something that you think is just terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's important advice as well, though, just to kind of pay attention to the little things around you. You never know when they're going to impact what you're doing down the line.
Yes.
Bring in different descriptions and different characters you meet, and as you said, let the characters lead you, and
Yes.
you'll have a much
I love
stronger
to do
story.
that, because they'll take you interesting places if you let them, if you just kind of let that organic aspect of it come through. And it's fascinating where they can take you sometimes. There's one of my main character. Well, he'll become a main character. He becomes one in this novel, and he'll continue to be. But he wasn't in the screenplay at all,
Right.
and he just kind of, at first I thought, well, he'll barely be a marginal minor character, and he's become a major character.
Wow.
And so, and I'm like, that's just I consider that a gift from God. It's like, well, I never would have thought or planned all these years. I've had this story, and I didn't have this character, and now I have this character, and I'm so glad.
Yeah.
He adds so much and adds a lot of dimension to the story, and so
Never can tell when those side
never
characters
can.
have become
Yeah,
important.
you
Yeah.
don't know. I know.
I think that's a very good point to round this out on. I think.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's been lovely to catch up with you. And
Well, it's been
glad we got
lovely
this
to
done.
catch up with you too. I think I finished my noir list.
Go on.
Okay.
I think so.
Okay.
I think
Thank
if you
you,
think of the
Graham.
Philip Marlowe film, I think
Okay.
you'll run that list out.
Okay.
I can always put that in
Okay.
comments. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Graham. It's been fun talking with you.
Hopefully it has. Hopefully it's
Yeah.
not been too of a painful experience.
No, it's been wonderful. I've enjoyed having coffee with you.
That's the way we want. On that note, we
Okay.
suggest people check out your work, and
Thank you.
they could find you. I'll leave links so they could find your book and whatnot.
Okay.
We will talk to these guys later. Click.
Okay.